Yeah, boy.
This here is the Roasted Wretch build. It's something I've been trying to put together for a while now, and the result is quite interesting. The idea was to create a build in Outward that uses Blaze, which is a status effect you can apply to burning enemies to make them take much more fire damage and set the ground on fire as well. Unfortunately, this can set you on fire, and since it deals a lot of damage, you die quickly. Luckily, I found a way to be immune to all fire damage and make this fire much more potent. Here is the terrifying Roasted Wretch, and how you can put it all together. At the start of the game, you want to craft some cloth knuckles and get Enrage from Burak. This allows you to deal much more impact to enemies, and since knuckles hit twice, you can knock things back pretty quickly. You'll need to head over to Harmattan and grab Prismatic Flurry from Mavith. This will cost you 1 pure chitin, but luckily there is a Sublime Shell outside the main gate to the left. Kill him with traps and lightning, and he usually drops at least 1 pure chitin. This skill makes your knuckles hit several times, depending on how many elemental boons you have active. This also applies status effects quickly, which will work to our advantage later on. You'll want to grab 3 total points of mana for 60 total. This amount isn't really that large, but we'll have mana regen, so it almost feels like we have an infinite amount. For our skill trees, we have a unique combination: Philosopher, Kazite Spellblade, and Rogue Engineer. Philosopher is for the fire affinity, which grants us more fire defense and damage. It's required to become immune to fire damage even without a boon active. Kazite Spellblade is for infuse fire. It makes sure we always have fire on our weapons and can even throw some with elemental discharge if need be. Now, we mainly want to use melee, but it's there just in case. Lastly, we have Rogue Engineer, and this is entirely for feather dodge. Knuckles have a perk where they only block 90% of damage, which sounds fine, but against some tougher attacks, a lot of damage can get through. Feather Dodge lets us wear a good backpack and dodge as much as we want to without running out of stamina. With all 3 skill trees, you have a very high amount of quality of life: infinite mana, stamina, and firepower. It's pretty nice to have all of this at your fingertips 24/7. The armor on this build is very important, as it's the rest of the puzzle for becoming immune to fire damage. You'll need the Gold Lich Mask, Petrified Wood Armor, and Zar Boots. All of this can be grabbed in a single playthrough, as Zar Boots are the easiest Zar armor to make, and Petrified Wood Armor can be crafted from the blacksmith and Berg as long as you have petrified wood. Each of these have very high fire resistance, and when combined with fire affinity, we reach 100 fire resistance or immunity. This combination of armor is also kinda cool, because you have really good mana cost reduction from the helmet and nice defense from the chest and boots. I recommend enchanting each piece with Aegis for more protection, but I didn't do it here just in case you want to use other enchants from Caldera or something. The armor set does feel great against physical attacks. You can take several hits without much issue. Elemental damage is a different story though, so the mobility granted by the Feather Dodge passive is pretty important. You also look really bad in this gear. It sort of goes together, but not in a good way. And I chalk that up to this build being a wretch. He's not supposed to look good coming up from the depths of hell itself. You'll only need 1 weapon for this build, and those are going to be the Smoke Knuckles. These grant the player nice attack speed, good physical damage, and honestly, decent impact as well. They also look fantastic when on fire, which had me pretty excited to use them. Their main perk, however, is their ability to inflict blaze. Any already burning enemy can be afflicted with this in only a few hits, and they take 5 fire damage per second. This can then spread to other enemies in the area, blazing everything into a fiery inferno. I liked the idea of using something that could kill the player if they were close, while still staying close. It's almost ironic, and with the fire immunity it doesn't hurt you, and instead looks awesome. These knuckles can only be found in Caldera or the volcanic region. The best way to find them is to loot ornate chests. The one from the Caligray Arena in particular drops smoke weapons often. You also have a chance to buy them from the blacksmith in New Sirocco, but let's be honest, that's very unreliable and late game. But they're worth getting because they're one of my favorite looking knuckles and smoke weapons for that matter. To do this right, you want to take the Holy Mission faction quest. There are some passives from that faction that are really helpful. Mainly the extra protection and negative 10 cost to stamina and mana. It's essential that you have loads of stamina on a knuckle build, and this perk helps us use hardly any at all. More weather defense is also pretty nice, as I like to not worry about weather as much. Holy Mission is just the most tanky way to go, and it helps if you happen to make a mistake in such close quarters combat. In order to use this build properly, I recommend setting up your hotbar similar to how I did here. You have Brace and Mana Push for impact, Mana Ward to use with Fire Sigil, and Elemental Discharge in case you need a bit of range. Before entering battle, be sure to do the following. Activate the Fire Boon, activate Fire Infuse, activate all other boons. Throw down a Fire Sigil and use Mana Ward inside. Walk up to your enemy and Prismatic Flurry them for much faster blaze buildup. The idea here is to deal loads of fire damage quickly. Activating Mana Ward inside a Fire Sigil grants you the Immolite buff. You can get 30% extra fire damage from this, but you also take 0.5 fire damage per second. This turns our blaze and punches into some really high damage attacks. The Immolite does no damage to us because, again, fire immunity, and you should be able to walk away from a lot of fights after the blaze is applied. Anything weak to fire will stand no chance at all, and constantly being on fire has an interesting feel to it. This is surprisingly good against enemies in Caldera, especially a gargoyle. I did not expect it to even be good against them, but I killed one pretty quickly. The blaze will deal a lot of damage fast, and you have a better chance of catching other enemies in these flames as well. It's a really fun way to play, honestly. Now that I've shown the build and described how to make it, let's talk about the downsides. Because no build is perfect, and one that deals this much fire damage has to have some drawbacks. Fire enemies suck. That's the main issue. You mostly want to avoid them as they take no damage from fire whatsoever. Scarlet Emissaries in particular are invincible as they have a ton of health to begin with, and you'll die before the knuckles even get them to half health. Golem enemies are also an issue as they can't be burnt, which means they can't be afflicted with blaze either. Luckily, they still take fire damage from your infuse, so they aren't as big of a problem. To solve this, simply grab an ethereal varnish. No, it doesn't get buffed from our gear, but an ethereal varnish alone is enough to topple both Scarlet Emissaries and Golems. Pretty quickly too, I might add. Another issue here is that knuckle builds are hard to master. It's easy to take a hit when you can't block as well, like you would with other weapons. I grabbed a Cali Grey Bone Cage to help with this one. It can be grabbed in Caldera chests and offers a bit of health regen and extra physical damage. The Smoke Knuckles are kind of odd as they only deal physical, but apply such a powerful type of elemental damage. This tent makes them feel pretty great even when you aren't working with an enemy weak to fire. All around, this is an odd build. You don't have super resistance to elements unless you fully potion up, and you're only doing fire damage. But man, does it kill opponents fast. I think Blaze is not something that's super good in Outward, unfortunately, and even with this build, I still feel the same way. It's just as good, if not way better, to max out ethereal damage and hit stuff with Dreamer's Halberd. But if you were to use Blaze without a bow, this is a very fun and easy way to do it. Punch monsters with the most fiery flames imaginable, and spend 50% of your life on fire. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Literally, in this case. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I will catch you next time.